Hello, I am Sydney and I love plants. Yesterday I went to my local Walmart trying to find a really nice clothing rack just for some extra storage that I was desperately in need of. And of course I always go in through the garden center. And now that I guess springtime is up and coming, they're starting to get a lot more plants back. I saw some really cool palms, just some really cool stuff in there. And then I saw a rubber tree for $16. And I just had to have it. I love rubber trees. I've never had a rubber tree. I've got tons of other plants, but I've just never had a rubber tree before. So I was like, this is a sign. So I ended up snagging a rubber tree. Just kind of wanted to show you how I go about buying plants, grabbing them from home, settling them into your home, and just typical care and what you can do to make it last a lot longer and just live a happy life, whatever plant it may be. But this one is featuring the rubber tree. Okay, first thing first, whenever you're picking out in this big old mix of plants, which plant you want to get. And my biggest advice here is to always look at how much bang are you gonna get for your buck. So typically all plants are pretty much priced the same. Like there was this rubber tree with tons of other rubber trees. And the number one thing I look at really outside of how healthy it is or whatever it looks like is how many stems or how many plants are within one pot. Because there are some plants that only have like one or two plants within the pot. So I always just check out to look at how many plants are in one pot. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And even if you go around here, 7, 8, plus a new growth here. Well, that's my number one tip whenever you're, in a sense, looking for some plants that you're about to purchase. Look at all of the plants in general. Look at how much is in one plant. Some planters only had like 1 or 2 stems. The planter that I got it looked like 2 really big plants in one pot. And what I also look at, tip number 2, is how much new growth is there, like new leaves or new stems forming already, like about in the process to, in sense, bloom. Are there new stems coming from the bottom as well for new growth as well? So look at new growth at the top of the leaves and also look at new growth at the bottom of the leaves. Something I don't really care about is how the leaves look. This current rubber tree, it's got a lot of like just water splatter residue where you can just tell they just kind of sprinkle them with water and just kind of falls. So I don't really care what, in sense, the leaves look like, as long as they're healthy, they look good, there's not a lot of dying leaves. That is always a really good key to see. Okay, ignore the residue, but look at how healthy is the actual plant. Does it look good? Does it look okay? How much new growth is available? Those really top two tips is really what I use for everything and anything. Any kind of plant. Every kind of plant, I always just look at the new growth from the bottom of the pot, like how many stems there are, how many plants are within the pot, how big, in sense, how much bang you can get for your buck, because every plant is the same price. But I would much rather prefer getting 3 or 4 stems instead of 2 stems. So just kind of take a look around. Don't be afraid to make yourself at home. I literally like take them down and I like look at all of them. So yeah. And then of course just looking at how healthy the leaves look. Don't look at a lot of, I mean, it's kind of hit or miss, but if it's like already kind of dying, then it's like, but just look at how healthy the leaves look. If there's some water residue, no biggie, that's perfectly fine because you'll clean it whenever you get home. Now that you picked your plant, you got your baby, you're all excited and you brought it home, the number one thing that I recommend is leaving it in its original potter, at least for like a month or so. Really, I try to leave it in the plant's original potter as long as possible until it's like bursting out and you can tell that it needs a new potter. For the most part, if you change out your plants into like a beautiful new potter because it's your favorite and it's amazing and it's great, you might shock the plant and it might start dying on you, and it's really sad because you just bought it and you wanted to adjust and be happy. So what I recommend is leave it in its potter. Just leave it for now. What I always like to do is I always like to get kind of big tins or big oversized baskets that you can just plop in there, so that way they look like they have a new potter but they really don't, but at least they'll be comfortable. They won't go through like a new shock, and it all kind of just works out great. Alright, so now what you want to do as well is talk a little bit about having some water residue from, you know, that's just how they get watered in these kind of like not as local or just kind of everywhere in general. Everyone just kind of like spritzes it with water. What I always recommend is, especially since the rubber tree has really literally rubbery like leaves, that's kind of where it gets its name, pun intended. I really recommend wiping off any kind of residue, anything really, with a wet paper towel, simply because this is how this baby thrives and grows, through its leaves. So the more that it doesn't have as much dirt or just like residue on it, the better it becomes. So I would really just get a nice little wet washcloth, paper towel, whatever you prefer, and just slightly clean the top of the leaves. I even get in the bottom of the leaves as well, just to kind of wake them up, say hello, what's going on. But yeah, the rubber tree literally is known for its rubbery leaves, so you really want to take care of them. You want to cherish them. You want to love them with all your might, and especially whenever you get home, you just kind of want them to have a new, fresh beginning. So definitely get a nice little paper towel and just start cleaning up those leaves. Really just gently, don't pull too hard, because even the rubber tree is nice and kind of thick. It still needs some love. Okay, now that we have picked our plant, we have gotten it home, left it in our pot, left it in the original potter, and also cleaned up the leaves a little bit. Truly, all that I really have for you is just a little words and advice for rubber tree care. So rubber trees can literally get up to 50 feet. They are huge and beautiful and amazing and gorgeous. But really kind of side note, I would really start on getting a smaller rubber tree, especially if you're going to grow it indoors. So I currently live in a super tiny apartment, and I have a lot of indoor plants. I have some on my balcony, but the ones on my balcony are kind of plants that are just casual plants that if they die in the winter, they die, but if they live, it's a great day. But this rubber tree, I've never had one, and I really want to take care of it and love it as much as possible. So what I would recommend is not necessarily starting off with a huge rubber tree, simply because if you get a rubber tree from a nursery and it's huge and it's beautiful, it's more than likely it's outdoors or in a pretty ginormous greenhouse. And if you don't have that, you might shock it, because rubber trees really enjoy indirect sunlight. So a lot of people kind of either put it like right near a window with sheer curtains, or a little bit farther from the window that it still gets some really good sunlight. But the main thing is, if it's just a really mature rubber tree and it's huge and beautiful and thriving. If you bring it home and you put it even by a window, and it's no longer outdoors, you're just gonna shock it simply because it was used to its really big and bright greenhouse that got really, really good indirect sunlight, and now you're bringing it home to a little bit more dim area. Of course, you know your home better than you do, so wherever you purchase this at, if it's in a greenhouse in a nursery and it's huge and ginormous and your house is similar to that, you go girl. Or guy, or whatever. But if you're just starting off like me, you've never had a rubber tree, but you love them and you want the baby to grow as prosperous and tall and beautiful as possible, definitely start out small so that way it adjusts a little bit better. It gets used to the temperature that you keep your house out. It gets used to the sunlight that it receives, and it really, really settles in. Rubber tree, it likes a moist environment, so that's why I recommend you can water it either two ways really, like we just did, just by putting a nice little damp cloth onto the leaves and then giving it just a smidge of water whenever necessary, but always just look at the soil. If the soil's already wet, then I would just recommend just doing a nice little like leave love every now and then, but just don't overwater it. It likes to be moist but not drowned. And lastly, don't get discouraged. Every plant really has its own personality. Every plant likes certain things, like certain watering, whatever. They all have their own personality. So what I would recommend is, of course, things that we talked about a little bit earlier, but of course, just really paying attention to the plant. If it starts to kind of take a downhill dip within the first couple of weeks, try to move the plant around, maybe closer to a window, or maybe if the leaves start to get burned, farther from a window. But typically, in general, don't get discouraged. If some of the leaves start dying, just cut them off, because either way you don't want any more of the plant's energy feeding that negative leaf. So just cut it off. I know it's sad, but just really listen to your plant, love your plant, you know, just really try to mess with it when it comes to location, but ultimately just don't get discouraged. Plants are fun. They're easy to propagate. That's why so many people love them, and really just have some fun with it. So if y'all decide to get a rubber tree, or you're looking for a rubber tree, know that if you live in Texas, your local Walmarts are now getting them. And this rubber tree, possibly maybe about almost 2 feet tall, is literally for $16.97. So go. And definitely tag me in pictures. I would love to see if y'all got a rubber tree, how you're liking it, what you put it in, what you're doing to make it love its life.